Okay, bye-bye.
Yep.
All right, let's bring in the man of the hour, the man himself, Garland Nixon. Garland Nixon is a political analyst and, well, political analyst, writer. I need to update your bio, Garland. How you doing? And also, you have your own website on Garland Nixon on YouTube, which again, check it out. The man does damn good work, his damn good interviews, and a good friend of this show. And I always appreciate you, man. Thank you for joining me. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas there, Jamarl, and thanks for inviting me back.
No, man, always. You're always welcome back. I want to go into some of the stories that are out. And this story by Chuck Todd is fascinating to me. So, like elections, there's a lot of stuff that these guys talk about behind the scenes that we know nothing about. Like where they would have their conversations, there's information that they get leaked all during the election, but it never comes out in public. But after the election, that's when the stuff starts coming out. Listen to what Chuck Todd said. Chuck Todd is having this conversation about information that he got behind the scenes on Hispanic voters. Now, I have always made this point that you should focus on workers. Basically, you should focus on the thing that unites us. And the reality of it is the overwhelming majority of the public is united by economics. How am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to pay my house? How am I going to pay my keep my kid straight? How am I going to pay for my car? And Democrats have a tendency to break people up into groups. So they was like, hey, Hispanics, we're going to pass legislation to keep you in the country. Aren't you happy? And Black folks, we're going to pass jail legislation so you don't get a huge amount of time. Aren't you happy? And it's like, dude, get the F out of here. Why are you pandering in this way as opposed to dealing with the real economic issues? So Chuck Todd was talking about the Hispanic vote and what he found out from Kamala Harris. Listen to what he says. I want to get your take on it.
My favorite part about a post-election is the losing side suddenly shares memos that they never would have shared with you. And I got one from a
Molly brought some today.
Right. A strategist for a Biden super PAC circa 2022 sent me a polling memo that he had sent to the campaign, and there was a single. He wanted me to note a single observation that he had made at the end, and it was having to do with the Latino vote. And what was interesting, they were asking all sorts of questions, and they were testing the democracy question. And one of the things that popped out to this source of mine, and he put it in his memo and he circled it to make sure I didn't miss it, was that Hispanics believed in a strong presidency. They were more open to a strong presidency. And in fact, were more, so this idea of the authoritarianism and this and that. And there was another aspect to it. The democracy message really didn't ring true with Latino voters, especially if they're first or second gen. Because first, you want to see a democracy crumbling? Let me introduce you to El Salvador. You want to see a democracy that doesn't work? Let me introduce you to Venezuela. And so it was one of those things that the Hispanic voters want a strong presidency, and they were more open to it, which was sort of this at the time. He was right, like Trump may make more inroads here than you think. And then the other aspect of Latino voters is the Trump campaign targeted them on the same issues they were targeting working class white voters. Mm-hmm. And the Harris campaign targeted them as a community of color. And that's where I think the disconnect.
Isn't that amazing? This basic thing of deal with these people as human beings as opposed to a racial demographic. Give me your take on this.
Two things. Number one, the first half of it was, again, neocon propaganda. Well, they're okay with an authoritarian dictator because Maduro's an authoritarian dictator, which is a flat out neocon lie. Okay, they're okay with these authoritarian dictators because El Salvador, in other words, well, gee, we overthrow a country and insert authoritarian dictators in various countries, and they run away from it, and they end up at our border, which somehow means they're okay with authoritarian. And none of it makes sense. It's a neocon garbage. So that's for starters. So he had to start by reinforcing the lies and tropes that they believe about the goodness of America going around the world spreading democracy. But darn it, some of these people come here and they want an authoritarian dictator anyway. Okay, he gets that out of the way. And then he goes to, well, Trump, basically in a nutshell, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you don't have heat and oxygen and water and protection from the elements, the very lowest level of human needs, you're not going to be talking about all of these other things, philosophical things, which like you and I look at that and we're like, you can say it's economics, people need the basics. You can even go as far as saying it is, as I said, the hierarchy of human needs. Before people are going to talk about philosophical issues, they got to have food and the basics. And shockingly, the Democrats have figured out after they get crushed that people need like food and things like that before you can convince them of these, the do-gooder stuff. It is hilarious, but the most pronounced part of that discussion to me is the reasons that the Democrats can't be fixed, because he has to start off with neocon foreign policy. If you're Democrats, you can question a lot of things. You may be even able to question the economic issues, but you can't question, like, what does he not talk about? Gaza. I had a guy who was 30 years old from New York say, all of my friends are Democrats, and I talked to all of them and said, why, not everyone, but everyone that I asked, are you voting for the Democrats? And they said no. And I said, why? And they said Gaza. That's what he told me. They can't talk about that. They can't talk about Ukraine and all the black folks who voted for Trump because they were like, why is all of this money going to Ukraine? And nothing's here to see what I mean. So even now he has to go to something that they can discuss, but there's a lot of third rails that he can't touch on. So I can't see how you can fix people who are loaded with the third rails that they need to discuss that they can't discuss.
But see, I think the economic thing is something they can't discuss either. But like the reality of it is, I think if they could discuss the economic thing in a way that made sense, they would do so. I think they're stuck in this, like I was saying, I think they're stuck in a box that, in order to win elections, you have to get money. And the people you get money from are the people who are effectively rich and don't need the things that the people in the Democratic Party want. It's a dilemma that the Republican Party doesn't have because they don't believe in those things. But if I get $1.5 billion, okay, who am I getting the money from? And what do those people really need that I'm getting the money from? And if the main people I'm getting it from are corporations or these kind of CEOs, the rich, etc., then my policies in some way are going to have to cater to their interests because those are the people I'm getting money from. And if you're a Democrat, that's problematic because your base wants healthcare, education, expansion of Social Security, meaning they want this economic populist stuff that you really can't run on because those people who are giving you money for are never going to agree with. And so if you notice, Kamala Harris was running with Liz Cheney, and she was reaching out to like these conservative right-wingers, these what they call Republican moderates, that she thought she'd be able to pull using Liz Cheney to do so, these kind of anti-Trumpers. And it didn't work, meaning she gave up her base that wanted this kind of economic populism for moderate Republicans that she thought she didn't really need to do that stuff with, believing that she was also going to get a huge number of Democrats along with her. Give me your take on that? Or do you believe the economics is something that they can go into and discuss? I'm curious on your thoughts.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head in that there's a difference between discussing it and act on it. If you notice, and one of the things they're always, the Democrats are big on this. We have to change our messaging about this. We have to change our messaging about economics and messaging about this and messaging. We got to change you know what they're not talking about? It's the way we governed. See, what they would have to do is change the way they govern. They're not going to do that. They're going to change the way they talk. So even when they say, we weren't giving the right message about economics, if they say that we were wrong, Trump spoke to them about this. And he talked to them about that. And we need to speak to them and talk to them differently. In other words, we didn't bamboozle. We need to bamboozle the people properly. We're going to do what we're going to do. Our neocon foreign policy, warmongering, money to the rich, blah, 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 blah. If we want to bamboozle the unwashed out there, we got to give them something that sounds well, even though we're never going to deliver it. And so I think that's where they have. The other thing is this about the money, I think there was a time when you could argue that the money made the difference. Think about a couple of things. Number one, Bernie Sanders equaled Hillary with money.
Yes, he did.
$27 at a time. So what we found out with Bernie for real is you can still get the same amount of money if you get it from the people, if you want to get it from the people, right? Number one. And so number two, Kamala outraged Trump 3-1 and he beat her. I mean, so what did we learn? Two things. Number one, the paradigm that the person with the most money wins, and the paradigm that the only way to get the most money is to get it from corporations, have both been proven false in 2016 in the primaries against Hillary, and in 2016 actually, and 2024, when both times Donald Trump beat people who had more money than he does. That when it comes down to it, all of the advertisements and everything else, people are they're going to like sit down and say, maybe things will work out for me a little better if I vote for this candidate economically. So I think when it comes down to it, what we see is the voters really are smarter than the ruling elite. And ultimately, they ain't going to buy into all of that stuff. So there's a new paradigm. I don't know how it works in 2028. God forbid. Hopefully we even get there. But I do think there's a new paradigm going on here and in Europe that we have to try to figure out. The person with the least money, 3-1, he was outraised, and he had money left afterwards. People didn't vote. Donald Trump, I think at this point, if he barely ran an advertisement, he'd have won, because people were. There were people that were. Here's the thing: you had people that were voting for him. You had people that were voting against Kamala. You had a huge amount of people that were staying home. You had people, that were voting for Jill Stein. You had the whole dynamic was Kamala's not going to win.
I think the presidency is a little bit different just because, you get so much free publicity, especially if your name is Donald Trump and everybody is talking about you. You've been a president once before. I think the 90% chance of winning has more to do with like the like elections, like federal, like Senate. But
Congress,
even Sanders, Sanders outraised Clinton though. I mean, like when he was in the primary, he was getting money from the public and just completely blew past her in regards to the fundraising. It was astonishing. And so it's a model that you could use. But again, if you use that model, you're going to have to be going with a completely different campaign that they don't seem to be part of the Democratic Party orthodoxy. I'll give you another one. So, what is his name? Sean Fain. Is it Fain? The guy from Teamsters.
Union guy.
So you might have seen this clip. He was on Tucker Carlson. And listen to what he had a conversation with Kamala Harris. And it wasn't even a conversation. She pretty much stuck her finger in his face and said, get on board. Literally did that. Listen to him.
So in your meeting with him, it was obvious that he
weeks in advance, the same 16 questions to each candidate. So, RFK answered all 16 questions. Probably most of them didn't answer them how we would like them to answer them, but they answered them. Joe Biden came in and he answered 5 of them. Donald Trump answered all 16. And then when Biden drops out of the race, but prior to Biden dropping out of the race, he's in the race around June or May. One of my vice presidents, a woman named Joan Corey out of my local, she sits on our general executive board, was at an event with Vice President Harris. And, they're going through the line to get the picture, and Joan introduces herself to Vice President Harris, says, I'm Joan Corey. I'm on the general executive board for the Teamsters. She goes, Teamsters? You better get on board. You better get on board. Better get on board soon. Says it to my vice president.
To her face?
To her face. So she comes back. We have the meeting the next day.
Damn.
And she tells me this.
I thought I was arrogant. That's really arrogant.
So
that's astonishing. Like, it's almost like they've inverted the political process, that you don't have to get my vote. Your vote is owned by me. You owe me your vote. Give me your take on that. That's astonishing. And I believe him. I don't disbelieve him at all. That's the way she ran her campaign. What are your thoughts?
Ironically, it's an authoritarian way of thinking, isn't it? For all of this, Donald Trump is the authoritarian. It aligns with their foreign policy. What do they do to countries? Do they go around the world and say, country X, we'd like a deal with you? No, they say, you better get on board, or we will destroy your economy. We will assassinate your leader. Right? This is if if you read on psychology, a lot of times, I read a lot of books on psychology, and what you find is that people repeat the same patterns in their life over and over again, whether they're at school, they're at work, the same pattern over and over again. And what we see about the leadership of the Democratic Party is their pattern is one of authoritarianism. It's one of entitlement, narcissism. You will do what I say or else. And when she says you better get on board, there is a clear implication there. If I say you better do something, it implies that if you don't, there will be a price to pay. And the message was clear: you better get on board, because if you don't, and we win, oh, we will get our revenge on you, right? It clearly implies, when I give you an order, if I ask you to do me a favor, it implies that if you say no, I'll respect that and walk away. If I give you an order, it implies that I have some authority to enforce that order. You better means if you don't, whatever is going to happen is not going to be to your best. So it does not surprise me. It is their whole way of thinking. And in fact, they even did that to the voters. If you don't vote for us, you're a fill in the blank. If Trump wins, he's going to do this to you. No matter what it was, if you don't do what we want, there will be some suffering as a result of it. And so, I mean, that's where the Democratic Party is in foreign policy and domestic policy. And that's what happens when you have a party that where Max Boot and and Bill, what's his name?
Jamarl?
I can't think of the guy's name. But these longtime neocons, these brutal, violent, vicious, fascist neocons are at the leadership of your party, are respected, the Cheneys, etc. of your party. That's the mindset that has attracted them to your party, and that basically people just are sick and tired of that. And it's weird that they call Trump an authoritarian. Trump has authoritarian tendencies, but I think, weirdly enough, he is better at having a conversation with regular people and a conversation that regular people can understand. Transactional. He's not as much authoritarian as he is transactional. And he's always playing the game of, maybe I got an up on you, but I can give you this. You can give me that. I can get a deal. Where these guys are just, you better do what I say or you're going to get it. Trump does that, but not in the same context as these people.
I don't know, man. I don't even know how they have worked their way into this mindset. Like, it's astonishing to me. Like, you get somebody like FDR who goes through and he sets this kind of context for the way the Democratic Party is known. And he hits that bell so hard that it reverberates all through history, going for like 60 years, where they're casting this notion of we're the party of workers. And then in this election, you had this phenomenon where a billionaire is able to win the working class, with the Democratic Party getting the votes of the elites and the very poor, which is astonishing. Like, you couldn't even get the Teamsters to give, like, when the Teamsters voted on who they were going to give their vote to, it ended up being Trump. And so the strongest position he could take was just not to vote for anybody. And do you see any level of recognition of that? Like, any level of autopsy or assessment beyond, okay, people are just racist and sexist and bigoted, and Kamala Harris ran a flawless campaign and she was just great. Like, do you see any recognition of fault, failure, defect within the context of the party itself? Because the issue is the party. It's not any one individual candidate. It's the way the party is viewed and seen, and I would argue viewed and seen correctly. Give me your take.
Well, you know what? I don't know if this makes sense. It's like when a person gets hit in the head with a bat and people say, "Are you okay?" Right? Are you okay? The part that would decide whether or not I'm okay is the part that got damaged, right? So if I say yes or no is irrelevant, the injury that I have stops me from being able to competently asking the wrong question. I wouldn't be the one that would know. I'm spinning around with light bulbs going off in my head, right? Okay. The ideology that they have stops them from being able to figure out their problems, right? If you listen to people who are like diehard Democrats, right, it's now a moral thing. We are morally superior to the Trump voters. Why? They're a bunch of fascists and racists and blah, 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 right? Hollywood, they put out a movie and people are like, it's the same old movie with a diverse group of female superheroes who fight against the patriarchy. I mean, fair enough for a movie or two, but we're tired of that. Can you give us another movie? No, because that movie is an expression of the moral superiority of the people in Hollywood. It is the mindset that they have claimed the moral high ground. That is the very dynamic that stops them from being able to do introspective work. You know what I mean? If you are the good guy, if you are the moral leader, then you don't ever need to question you. In fact, the people that question you are evil. So when people say, well, perhaps we need to, look at ourselves. Oh my God, you're one of them too. You must be a Trumper. You got to get out of our circle of morality. And then the group, it's weird because the smaller their group gets, the more intense the belief, you know what I mean? The belief becomes that they're right. And then you're left with only the true believers now of that the Democrats are right. But those true believers, man, they really believe. But they only get one vote, so they're going to get crushed continually.
It's so weird. I had a conversation. My doctor is a Democrat, and her and I have had good conversations. And as the election got closer, and I pointed out to her, one day I was like, "Dude, you guys are in a bubble." I was like, "You guys are alienating a large part of the population. You don't get it. You don't see it." She's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And I said, "You're going to lose." She's like, no, Kamala Harris is great. She's running a great campaign. You think she's running a great campaign because you hate Trump, and she spent her time talking about Trump. The rest of the American public is not there. She was oblivious. Trump wins. And I see her again, and she is shattered. Like, just shattered. And she doesn't quite understand why she lost. And I was shocked that she didn't understand why she lost. And it's like, I'm explaining it to her, like, look, I get it, man. You guys are elitists. You're in a bubble. You think you're morally and ethically superior. You're not. You guys are warmongers. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Trump is horrible. And it's like, that's your issue. You keep focusing on Trump as opposed to dealing with American issues. She still, to this day, I do not think she understands how she lost. It is weird. It's like, it is a very bizarre thing to talk to them. And it's almost like they're in a cult. But when Sam, I don't know if you've seen this kind of lefty drama that's been taking place with Sam Cedar going after Cenk Uygur, because Uygur has started to deviate some of his positions. And it's like somebody is trying to leave a cult, and the cult is freaking out that the person's trying to leave the cult. It is the weirdest thing in the world to watch. It is bizarre. Do you think there's a way out to this for them? Because from the Democratic Party was the from the standpoint of the way our political spectrum works, Republican Party is supposed to be the party of the rich. Democratic Party is the party of the poor. And there's this kind of working class element in the Democratic Party that they're supposed to cater to in order to soften the rough edges of the capitalistic system. That is not the way it works now. It's almost like you have two parties for the rich, with the Democratic Party messaging that they are for the working class, despite the fact that the working class didn't vote for them. Like, is there a way out for them on this? I mean, because they're not going to go to Bernie Sanders. I would argue that would have been their way out, meaning that would have been their change that they needed in order to kind of reinvigorate this message of what they stand for. They did everything in their power to destroy Sanders. So what is the pathway out of this? Or is there one?
I don't see one. One of the things I think, and, understanding the Trump phenomenon, right? And people are like, oh, well, Trump's still a imperialist or whatever you call it, a globalist, blah, 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 all of those things, which all of those things are true. To an extent, they're all true.
To an extent, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Here's, I think, the difference. And this is why the Democrats are in such big trouble. The one thing Trump realizes that they don't is you got to give them some crumbs, right? You got to listen to them a little bit. And so when they say, hey, we're not happy about maybe censorship, Trump realized, you got to turn that down a little bit. The natives are getting restless, right? When they say, yeah, all our jobs are gone, Trump says, you got to try to bring a couple. He's not going to change the system, but Trump will try to bring a couple factories or something back. Hey, look at me. I brought back a factory that builds recreational vehicles or whatever for Elkhart, Indiana, something like that, at least, right? Trump realizes that you have to at least make some an attempt to give some crumbs to come through for the working class, right? If you're going to continue going around the world plundering and pillaging, which he will, I think Trump also sees something like this. I think Trump's like this. Look, I'm going to go screw over Venezuela and small countries like that. I don't want to tangle with a big nuclear country like China or Russia, because we'll all get nuked. We'll beat up on the little guys and we'll kind of tussle back and forth with the big guys. But he's more, we're going to beat up on the little guys and not the big guys. That's just too dangerous, right? It's more realistic globalism and, you know, imperialism or whatever, right? It's like, well, we don't want to die in a nuclear holocaust for this imperialism thing, but we still want to do it. So let's pick an easy target, a soft target, right? So all I'm saying is this. He seems like a more realistic version of this American exceptionalist project than they are. And he's like, you got to give something to the littles. You have to make the littles feel heard. You have to kind of align a little bit with the littles, where the Democrats are just like, no, we have to have a message to the littles to get them to go along with what we want to do. Right. We want to do all of these things around the world. Democracy, which just means regime change and theft of resources around the world. We have to feed it to the littles in a way that they'll go along with it, even though they're not going to get anything out of it. And now Chuck Todd's kind of saying, you know, we have to change our messaging even more. And now we have to make them think we're doing something for them economically. It's always just a message. We don't ever do anything. Just change our message. And he's going to get beat up by the true believers for even going that far.
Why do you think that they don't go after? I mean, because the issue is the way elections are run. Like, basically, if you're going to allow speech to equal money, okay, well, the person with the most money has allowed his speech. And so if you allow an economic system where people could donate just ungodly sums of money, I mean, elections are at $1.6 billion. Kamala Harris raised $1.6 billion. Like that amount of money is stunning for an election. And then to lose, and not just lose in debt on top of that. I mean, she's always had issues with money, even in the other election. I guess my point is, why, from your point of view, don't they go after that system if that system is such a problem for them to run? Like, you would think that they would say, okay, this is a disadvantage for us because we're supposed to pass lefty policy. And if we need to pass lefty policy and we need to get money, okay, well, they can always get more money to stop the policies that we need to pass. So let's do something about the economic system that allows them to get that much money, meaning attack the thing that's hurting my interests. It doesn't come up. They bring it up every so often, but it's never something. It used to be something that they talked about. And somewhere along the way, it was like, yeah, screw it. We'll just go with this.
You know, I remember one of the Democratic Party apparatchiks named Hillary Rosen. And, you know, she just went on all of these shows and said Hillary Clinton's going to win in 2016. The Democrats are the greatest thing since pockets, blah, blah, blah. Right. And at the end of the process, we found out through the WikiLeaks cables release that that the Democratic Party was pretty much broke, that the Clinton people were paying all of their bills, and that Hillary Rosen had a $25,000 a month contract. What for? I don't know, but $25,000 per month, that's pretty good loot, right? Here's my point. We say they lose because they don't win the office, right? But all the people that are involved in the process win. So what happens? If you were one of the recipients of some of that 1.4 billion, right? Okay, man, they spent 1.4 billion and they didn't win. But my company that provides, you know, food or stages or sound equipment or whatever, and we got $120 million out of this. We got 10 million. So at the end, it was a process where all of these people who feed off of that system fatten their pockets up. 2028, they don't care if the Republicans get the White House, because over the course of that, those feeders are going to clean up. 200 billion will be raised. They'll all get their share of it. In the end, they all walk away rich and fat and rich for 4 more years. So you've got the people at the bottom of the party, the constituents saying, we lost. And now the Republicans are going to pass a bunch of rules and regulations that we don't like. And the rich people running the party are like, well, they don't bother us that much anyway. And plus, we're all getting rich off of this process. Bad news. You lost. we win. We always win. That's the other part of it. You know, the money laundering part of it.
That is so That's so infuriating. I mean, it really is, because, you know, people get into politics because they want things to change. And when you get people who start paying attention to it, who's reading it, who's involved, who's, you know, going to campaign events and those type of things, those people are not in on the joke. They're just not. They, like, when I got into politics, especially when Sanders ran, I got into it because I wanted things to change. You know, it's like you grow up in a household where your mom is not making a huge amount of money, where you are under financial stress constantly, and you can see the toll that takes on people around you and your family and other people's family. I mean, the person we used to live by didn't even have lights. The kid used to sit with a candle in order to do homework. It's like, okay, well, that shouldn't happen, right? I mean, you live in a country that's this wealthy. You shouldn't have a kid sitting there with a candle. And then the other questions come in, okay, well, is that kid is even eating? Do they have money to get groceries? Like, how far does this go? That kid is not alone. And even though we weren't necessarily in that situation, we definitely struggled. And so it's like when you hear somebody say, okay, we're pushing for $15 an hour. Like, yeah, 15, that would have been a difference. That would have been a huge difference growing up. In regards to the difference they would have made in regards to salary and the amount of money that would have been coming home. When you hear saying Biden saying we're going to give $300 to kids for families to help raise their kids. Again, that is a big difference for people who are not necessarily making a huge amount. They do it for what, a month? Goes away. $15 an hour as soon as Joe Biden gets in, goes away. So it's like, okay, so all of these things that would have actually had a benefit and affected people's wallet fell apart immediately. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And as you point out, for them, well, they're already rich. Any tax cut that Trump has is going to be to their benefit. They may not like it for team reasons, but all things being equal, it's not necessarily hurting them in the way it is hurting the majority of the American public. It's super frustrating. I agree with you. I don't think they care one way or the other. And yeah, I do think they benefit. Nancy Pelosi, and I'm going to close it right here. Nancy Pelosi one time said, yeah, we lost, but those people will come back because they have nowhere else to go to. That's the way she thinks. That's the way she thinks. Did you see the New York case? What is her name? The governor of Hochul.
Hochul, yeah.
Katie Hochul. She comes out and says, our subways are safer. I've accomplished the objective of making this place much safer. And then you get a person being set on fire in the subway, and you get a stabbing that took place yesterday. The fire, I don't even know if I can show this. I'll just show this image. The woman, it's hard for me to wrap my head around this. The guy sets her on fire, and you can see people walking by. There's even a cop that walks by as she stands there on fire. And I kept thinking to myself, what the hell? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? You were a cop. You did this job for a period of time. I remember Jamarl said that there are no cops even in subways in New York. Like, they're not, they don't have video cameras. They don't have any of that stuff. I mean, how do you deal with something like this? Or is it even possible to deal with this level of crime in the New York City subways to make these places safer? I looked at a Chinese subway and there were kids sitting down on the floors playing, jacks or stuff, like perfectly safe. Is this the price of freedom, as Jon Stewart said?
Well, it's the price of neoliberalism. It's what it is. It's the price of economic pain and desperation, crimes of desperation, a country that's coming unglued. This is what we have. And, I remember when I worked with the FBI's terrorist task force, the JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, for a year. And one of the things that they said very, very early, because my job was to identify potential targets for terrorism in Maryland and then come up with plans to mitigate them, right? And basically the first thing they said to sum it all up was, look, if some guy at home decides he wants to go kill a bunch of people or do a terrorist act, there ain't nothing you can do to stop that. You know what I mean? It was a recognition of the truth that you don't want to tell the people that, if some guy just decides he wants to go to the aquarium or whatever the hell, or, go down to the harbor and shoot a bunch of people, you're going to be dealing with the aftermath. You can't stop it for the most part, right? And so that's the reality in a city like what are there, 25,000 cops, I think, in New York City. But, you know, 12 million people. The truth of the matter is this. There isn't enough cops, notwithstanding, I don't know what the hell's going on with a cop walking by with a woman on fire. That seems quite problematic to me. He has a legal duty to act.
Well, you know, the guy that was fanning, that was the guy that set on fire. He was trying to fan the flames to make it worse. Like, that's just astonishing stuff. I mean, this is after, Perry choked Penny, choked the guy to death on the subway. Then, like I said, it was a knife stabbing the other day, and this is after Hochul came out saying the subways are now safe.
Yeah, you know what amazes me, and that is these proclamations like that. Things are going great. The subway's going. It's like those always are just before some disastrous thing. Everything's going great. Everything's going wonderful. Why they even say? Remember this? Was it Jake Sullivan who said the Middle East has never been calmer? Everything's going great just before October 7th. Why they announcements? It's almost like they're calling down the from the universe. They're screaming out to the universe, do something really over the top now. We just said everything's great. I understand these. Hochul's such a clown though. She really is you know what she is? You know how they would always say, there'd be like a conservative who was really weird and would say crazy over the top things. And you'd be like, yeah, that's pretty weird. That the Democrats now have an element of that in their party. And Hochul's part of that element that are just like totally nuts.
It's totally nuts. Well, clearly she is not succeeding at that job, to put it mildly. I mean, in fact, Jen Psaki, and I'm hitting these political things just to get your take on these political things.
Sure.
When you lose Jen Psaki, you've lost your party. That's where I'm at, right? Jen Psaki was a former speechwriter, communications person for the Biden administration. She ends up getting a job on MSNBC. And to be honest, there's not much of a difference between those things because they effectively,
former
you said the same stuff anyway, right? She's, whether she's speechwriter for Joe Biden, communications person for Joe Biden on MSNBC, same difference. So, AOC was running for one of the communications positions. And I can't remember the guy's name that she was running with, but she's going to say it here. AOC lost. And she lost to a guy that was like 70 years old. Jen Psaki comes out and is like, dude, did we not learn anything from the election? Basically criticizing the Democratic Party for not choosing AOC, which is just, again, astonishing. When you lose Jen Psaki, you've lost your party. Something has gone fundamentally wrong. Let's go back to the beginning of this.
What I would consider a big opportunity. They passed over Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for the top Democratic spot on the Oversight Committee. Instead, they chose Congressman Jerry Connolly, a much older member who was backed by Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi. So why does that matter? Well, I mean, this is one of the few committees in Congress that actually generates national attention or media coverage. Under Jamie Raskin, it became a critical platform for countering Republican misinformation. And while I have deep, deep respect for Speaker Pelosi, she's been on the show many times. She's fierce. And nothing against Congressman Connolly at all. This felt like an obvious chance to apply some of the lessons we should have learned from the November election, right? Instead, Democrats passed over one of the youngest, most media-savvy members of Congress for a key leadership public role.
Right. Is she right? Meaning, look, I have my issues with AOC. I did video after video putting a knife in her for stuff that she's done, either attacking Jill Stein or supporting the war or attacking Tulsi Gabbard. She has turned into just a good little Democrat under Mama Bear's tutelage. And all of this, God, man, it's such a change. When AOC got in, she's like, we need to primary some folks. We need to change Washington. And now it's, we need to fight the war in Ukraine. And Tulsi Gabbard is horrible. And, whatever other random thing the Democrats wanted to say. Psaki's point is you're putting an old man into this position where you had the opportunity to put a new face on the role. Is Jen Psaki right? Give me your take.
The conversation shows us the decrepit state of the party because it's identity politics. I could mention Jerry Connolly, but yes, I remember when I was putting cameras in a security system in one of the houses that he was building in Washington D.C. years ago. And meeting
Really?
I worked for a security company that did all of that kind of stuff for a lot of very wealthy people. And because I was a former law enforcement officer, they'd always send me out as the point man on that stuff. And
That's so
the
cool.
whole lot of names I could give you, Jerry Connolly was one of them. But at any rate, I knew a bunch of people that were good friends with him. The people that owned the company that I worked for. But here's the bottom line. So if I ask Jen Psaki, why is it policy related? No, he's an old white man and she's a young Latino person. Why should they stick an old white man when they said, oh, really? Do you think her policies would be any different? Well, they better not be, because she'd be canned if they were. But what's important is the who's in there, and that we have a diverse, it's Hollywood. We need a diverse, strong young woman in there, as opposed to, for the latest superhero movie, as opposed to an old white guy. Why he's got white hair? People will look at him and see, no, we want to. That ain't what people are voting anymore. Donald Trump is an old rich white guy. And you just lost to an old rich white guy. They don't care about that. She's still stuck in identity politics. She's only mad because she's like, look, we can still get away with the same crap that we're doing. We can get away with all of it. All we got to do is stick the right faces in there. People will come watch our Disney movies if we have diverse female superheroes. Oh, darn, they're not here. They're not coming. I don't understand why.
They don't get the hint, man. Like, what do you say? Go woke, go broke.
Yeah,
is what they're saying. And then they screwing with my Star Trek. It's like Discovery Star Trek, man. I complained, I bitched and moaned so much about Discovery. It sucks so bad. And they seem like every other few episodes, they're crying. They're having group talks. One woman got pissed off because of her pronouns. And I'm like, okay, this is nonsense. This is not Star Trek. Don't give it, like, you've screwed over my Star Trek. They recently come out saying Discovery is not part of the main timeline. It was that bad. It was that bad. Stop screwing with that stuff. No, I agree with you. I'm sorry, this is Divergent. I'm
with you. I love Star Trek. Get caught in a time loop, and then somebody figures out that you're in a time loop and finds a way out. That's Star Trek, man.
They don't.
That's what we're talking about.
But you made the point, and I think the point is right. It is hard to make any changes when you don't think anything is wrong. It's like the first step for knowing that you're crazy. Like, crazy people don't know they're crazy, and so for them, I don't get it. Everything is great. Kamala Harris attacked Donald Trump. She called him a criminal. She called him, a gangster. She said he was a felon, and I don't see what went wrong. And in that case, she's thinking, we need a young woman of color. That's what we need to have.
More identity politics.
Yeah, more identity politics, as opposed to, hey, what are the policies that your party? Because I think what it boils down to is, what is the policies, or what are the policies that your party expounds? Meaning, what does your party stand for? And they don't seem to get that part. Like,
what,
they don't.
What was the name? What was the committee again that they wanted AOC to be in charge of?
It was. Oh, damn it! Let's see. Hold on. I can pull it.
Oversight
Committee.
Oversight. Right. You know what? Think about this. Shouldn't her discussion have been, well, they oversee the intelligence and they oversee FBI. Are they doing a good job of overseeing them? Do people have concerns about the FBI or censorship or intelligence operations? Are they propagandizing the American people? What about a discussion about, I don't think the American people want a young, strong female. I think they want somebody who's going to say, is the FBI reading my email all day long?
AOC is not going to care about them reading your emails.
Right.
I'm just telling you, she's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Democrats are pro-censorship. I mean, like, that's their thing. I mean, like, when they lost the election, what they came out with was, too much misinformation is online. That's why we lost. Like, that's the nonsense that they were saying after the election. I don't get the sense that they're taking responsibility for losing. I just don't. So,
yeah, they have a condescending attitude. It's misinformation. What does that mean? That means that the people, these poor, stupid people, have been easily misled because of their little, childlike minds have been misled by smart people. And we have to tell them the way it really is, because they're just not smart enough to figure it out on themselves. They're so condescending towards the working class.
Yeah. If they were smarter, they would have voted Kamala Harris. That's their thinking.
Yeah.
These, this is just misinformation. By the way, they do the same thing in Europe. The liberals act the same way in Europe. So, man, Garland, God, I always appreciate you. We have a damn good crowd. We have 500 people here today.
Wow.
So, and they started to pop up when you walked in. So they definitely love you. Thank you for this, man. Garland Nixon. He's a political analyst, writer, and host of his own show, Garland Nixon, on YouTube. You can definitely check him out. His shows are damn good, great interviews and everything else. And again, he's the man that got me in the radio, and you have my devotion and appreciation for the entirety of this life. I will be on my deathbed.
Everybody know, if everybody's watching, know Jamarl and I are going to start doing some co-hosting some shows, and we're going to run them on both of our channels at the same time. And we'll talk about, like we are now, we'll talk about whatever's out there, fun stuff, and have a blast. So spread that around a little bit. We're going to be doing co-hosting some shows and combining the audiences of our collective channels together, and having some fun. We're planning on doing that tomorrow, right?
Now, I was thinking about, tomorrow. I was thinking about this, how, there's no way to do that simultaneously, because the moment that you have one camera open for stream share, let's say both of us are using StreamYard or any system. The moment that my camera is used, it's used. I can't use it in two places at once. So there's no way for me to run it on my channel at the same time as your channel. It would have to be balanced.
Here's what it'll do. Don't worry about yours. I'm going to send you a link ahead of time. Right? When click on the link and go into StreamYard. When you go into StreamYard, it'll pop up a little thing that says, "Oh, do you want to run this? Name it." Right? And you just when I send you that, you just name whatever you want it to name, Garland and whatever you name it, right? And then click OK and forget about it. Just do the interview with me. StreamYard will handle the rest. When you do the interview with me, StreamYard will take that and it will run it on your channel. So you don't have to do anything.
Really?
Yeah, it's beautiful. You don't have to do anything. But when you click on the link, a little box will pop up for you to name it. And you name that stream and you click OK. And then you just do the interview with me, just like I'm doing with you. I go in and do it, and it'll run it. You wouldn't even have to be there. If I send you a link for any of my show, if I'm doing a show later on today, if I send you a link for it, right? If you just click OK and name it and go on about your business, it'll run it on its own without you doing anything. It's great. So we're going to do some stuff together, and we're going to have a blast, and our collective audiences, and will hopefully enjoy it.
And we're going to try to get more people too, where we have like a group of conversation with it. No, I think it'd be good. I think it'd be damn good.
What time tomorrow? 1:30, right? 1:30.
Yeah, we're gonna do 1:30 tomorrow, unless you want to do a little bit later. But it's up to you. I'm fine. I'm fine with 1:30. Yeah, I'm fine with 1:30.
You want to do two? Would two work better for you?
2. Let me see. 11, 12, 1, 2. 2 may work better. Yes.
Let's make it 2 p.m. tomorrow. I'll put it in my calendar. Everyone that's watching, 500 people, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Jamarl and I'll come on for an hour, and we'll have a blast. Look for some stuff to talk about. I'll look for some stuff to talk about. We'll have a good old time.
Badass, man. That should be good. Man, I always appreciate talking to you on this.
Look forward to doing that regularly. We'll build our own kind of like collective audience for our show together.
We can do it like once a Friday if you want.
Oh yeah, that's
and build more people and stuff like that. So we have like groups of people as we're doing it.
Yeah,
like
you know what I think? Think about this, and it's this is great because the audience is watching us. Hey, we got nothing to hide from them. I think that if you remember, one of the things that we did on our show when we were on, with the Dr. Wilmer Leon, at the end of the week, we would always do a show and we would say, hey, these are the big stories of the week. I think on Friday, you and I look at like, hey, what's the big stories of the week? And we hit the biggest stories of the week to kind of close the week out every Friday.
The weekend roundup. Yeah,
exactly.
Rick Sanchez used to do that too. We used to bring people on like Friday nights and then just kind of go through sort of story. No, that's a good idea. That's a good idea, especially if we're going to do it on Fridays.
Perfect.
I'm down for that. I think that's gonna be good.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna be good. Dude, thank you for this, Garland. You have a good day, man. Merry Christmas to you.
All right. And looks like you're really rolling, man. Doing this morning show's really grown. You know, when I first started watching, there wasn't that many people, and now 500 people. Wow.
Now it's growing.
Awesome.
It's up to 35,700. And I think we put. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. And I think we put on about 4,000 subs.
Awesome.
It is rough sometimes. I gotta be
In
honest.
spite of YouTube and all of their shadow banning, because that is heavy, man.
Believe it or not, for me, it's like when we're doing the radio show, you have producers. The producers book the guests. You have to worry more so about getting the stories right, that type of stuff. And then when you do it, you do it all. It's like you're booking your guests. You're booking it. Like this morning, one of my guests canceled like 2 minutes before the show started. It's like, God damn it. Like, there's nothing to do with that, right? And it's like you're sending off requests to try to get people at the last minute. You feel crappy doing it. And then I hate sending off requests because I don't like to ask anybody for anything.
Yeah.
All things equal, I like to do it myself. It's that part is the part because that's the part that's always an unknown. Because one thing if you do the show, fair enough, but you getting guests is an unknown quantity. It's no way to know. At some point, the guest could say, "Yeah, I don't want to do it." The guest could drop dead. They could be pissed off at you for something that you said. Like it could be anything. It's just that's the part I hate. But the other stuff, the audience and everything else, I love.
So much fun, isn't it? All right, man. Tomorrow, 1:30.
I will see you tomorrow
2 p.m.
2
p.m.
Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. You have a good one, man. Be safe today.
I'll send you a link, and then you'll see when you go to do that link. You'll see. Soon as you get the link, click on it, and go right into StreamYard like you were going to be and you'll see the little thing pop up, and you'll be like, "Oh, all I got to do is name it. We're good."
Badass. I'll do that.
All right.
Be safe, man. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.